So why don't we kick it off? I'm assuming, Kelly, that I should give it a start here, given that I'm the chair of the committee.
Most definitely.
Thank you. So welcome, everyone. And I don't know if I have to call for a disclosure of pecuniary interest here, but just in case, I'll do it. I don't think no, it's not on the agenda. So just do a roll call to make sure everybody's here. Carrie, you're available?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, everybody's hearing. Devlin, I guess, Lisa, you're
Yep.
also. Debbie?
Here.
Good. It's just a sound check as much as anything. Neil?
I'm here.
John?
I'm here too.
And Andy?
I'm here.
Excellent. So let us get started. It's going to be a interesting process because there are so many comments and notes to go through and try to put them into the right context that I think it's going to take a little while. I understand, John and Debbie, you are a hard stop at 3 o'clock, so we'll try to get as far through this process today as possible. Carrie, in an exchange of emails earlier this week or late last week, I suggested that we ask Debbie and John for input on what the best way to approach this is. And so do we have some recommendations on what the best approach is for the meeting today from your perspective, having done this more than once, I'm sure?
Well, I think we sort of briefly thought that perhaps the themes that I outlined could easily be reviewed quickly, and then assuming we get through the themes, the common themes, that should eliminate a lot of the comments that are repetitious, and then we could go through the more complicated comments. I believe is the only way we're going to do a thorough job and not be criticized for missing something. So I would, in my opinion, I would start with the common themes and address those, and then go to maybe some of the specific comments that we've received that have specific things that could also be addressed relatively easily.
Okay, now I have a problem, I think, in that I couldn't sign on, or well, I could sign on fine to the township iCompass product, but it wouldn't download anything for me. So I'm having to do it from PDF, and I don't have your list of common themes in the PDF document, Carrie. And iCompass wouldn't allow me to do it.
They're on page 11. They're on page 11 of the PDF.
Page 11?
Yeah, the last page, I think. Well, no,
Yeah.
not the last.
20 pages, but it's page 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are just common themes that run common throughout all the comments. We just pulled those out in that they were repetitive.
Okay. Well,
Would it help if I shared them on my screen for everybody?
Yeah.
yeah, please
Great.
do. That would help. Because I just, oh, okay, I found them, I think. No, that's not them either. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Dylan.
Okay, I see it. Thank you. So provisions addressing personal or non-pecuniary interests. We had a long discussion about that last week, but and the advice is to wait for the province to incorporate into the Municipal Act. Better to develop definition of following in code of conduct. Does that address some of the concerns that came up? Because a lot of people brought that topic up in their comments. And so what exactly are we going to include are you recommending that we include in the procedure bylaw to address this? See the municipal act or see the code of conduct? I'm not really sure where or how this is going to be included. It's my problem with the common themes is that it doesn't follow the actual points in the procedure bylaw, and it's hard to address it because it comes up 2 or 3 times throughout the bylaw. So I guess, how do you see that we address this within the bylaw itself?
Councillor McElwain, I think John Muscaron has his hand up. He can address it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair, but I think I addressed this at some length last time, and I said that the comments that I've seen, they're not ill-founded in any way, except that they're a bit simplistic. Given the complications with personal, private, and non-pecuniary interest right now, because the province hasn't seen fit to align the Municipal Act voting procedures with what seems to be the developing law that council members should disclose and seek to not have any involvement with any matters in which they have any kind of conflict of interest, whether it's pecuniary, private, or personal. However, the Municipal Act doesn't align with that right now. So my recommendation last time is to leave this aside for the moment and await the province to make amendments to the Municipal Act that then says if you are disqualified from voting, then your vote is just not counted at all. Right now, if you're at the council table, even though you may have disclosed a personal or a private conflict of interest, your vote still is counted and it goes to the negative, even if you abstain. So that's the difficulty right now. So I would recommend to you that you leave this aside for the moment.
Okay. I understand what you said last time and what you said again today, and I don't disagree. But not addressing it at all seems like we're ignoring an issue that has to be addressed at some. I guess should we be putting a line item of some sort in there on how we will address it in the future, or how councillor, I mean, we have been through it now. The current council has been through your education last week. But in a year and a half from now, we're going to have a new council or some new members of council, and it would be nice to have something in a procedure bylaw that would help direct them. So I'm just curious if we should not have some statement concerning what you just said.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, if I could, I would recommend no at this time, because we don't know what the province will do. The anticipation is, given the Collingwood judicial inquiry, and really hearkening back to the Mississauga judicial inquiry 9 years ago now, that apparent and perceived private and personal conflicts of interest should be addressed. The province still hasn't done anything. I have no confidence that they're going to do it in the next couple of years. So I don't know how you want to address it. And here's the difficulty. If you say members must disclose all conflicts of interest, pecuniary and non-pecuniary, then you're requiring everyone to know the rules. And the rules are that they have to disclose them and then leave the room. leave the setting so that when the vote's taken or anything is happening, they're not seen to influence anything that might be pertinent to that very question. And the law just hasn't developed as quickly as you'd like it. So you can certainly address it, but then it makes it, I think, more difficult to police, and makes it much more difficult for your clerk to have to watch everyone who's always leaving the room. I suppose that you're partly doing that already, Carrie, but you know, I just think it's too problematic at this time.
Okay. We'll get to have discussion in a minute. I just have one more. From a very personal point of view, I went through this myself in my first term of office in 2006, 2007 timeframe, because I was opposing a local gravel pit. And I was basically threatened by the gravel company that if I spoke up, that they would accuse me of conflict of interest because I live near it. I spent a fair amount of personal money going through a lawyer to find out if that was in fact the situation, and he came back with a recommendation that I should declare a conflict. And then I had to withdraw, and I do the same thing with a local not-for-profit that I run. Every time we discuss that not-for-profit, I withdraw and move out of the room. And I just thinking that in neither case are those pecuniary conflict of interest. In both cases, I should withdraw. And I'm just wondering if we shouldn't have some kind of guideline that, you know, as I say, it's from a personal point of view, I had to do it. So I feel that there should be a common understanding of councillors.
If I could, Mr. Chair, and again, I hope that's okay if I just interrupt here.
Absolutely, please.
In my view, those were both pecuniary interests, the way you described them. If you live close to a gravel pit, were you within the catchment area for the notice, for instance?
Yes.
Okay, right there, that shows that the province believes that you will be impacted. So therefore, you have, I believe, a financial interest in the matter. So that's the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The other matter that you mentioned is you're a member of a nonprofit, I believe you said.
Yes.
Okay, and if that body, and that's the term I'm going to use, the body, if a body has a financial interest in a matter before council, then you indirectly have the interest of the body. So that's also an indirect pecuniary interest, and that's covered by the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Neither one of those are private or personal or non-financial.
Okay. That is not well defined anywhere. So once again, I still think it leaves question marks, but any comments from other members? Neil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in my view, the Conflict of Interest Act is an act like the Municipal Act that governs council and their relationships and their actions. What we're talking about today is a procedural bylaw, which helps us get through a meeting and how we further the democratic rights and democracy in the community, in our meetings. So we always have to be cognizant when we're in a meeting of our obligations under the Municipal Act and under the Conflict of Interest Act. So those are outside, and considering the province is doing so much work, like John says, to revamp the conflict of interest in relation to the Municipal Act, I don't think it belongs in this procedural bylaw because it's going to slow things down tremendously. I think we all have to be cognizant of those issues and make ourselves familiar with the Conflict of Interest Act and the Municipal Act. But this bylaw is to help us run meetings.
Anyone else? Any comments?
Yeah, just add my 2 cents. I don't think we've ever had an issue with this on council, and we have a perceived issue. There's, you know, I think we're all pretty careful about pecuniary interest, and if we're close to have a pecuniary interest, I've recognized that most people remove themselves from the discussion and leave. So I don't think this is being driven by a real issue. It's a perceived issue, and if the intent behind this is to try to get at campaign contributions, this won't do the trick. You know, anything that we've gotten back on campaign contributions as far as being a conflict of interest has been clearly demonstrated that it isn't. So if that's where people are motivated to put something like this in, it's not going to work. And so I kind of agree that this is something that doesn't belong. We have to stick to what's already in the Municipal Act. I don't know how we go through the process of defining what a personal conflict of interest is, if it's not already a legal definition that's being required by the Municipal Act. So to me, I don't see that this is that this will address what some of the political concerns are out there.
Carrie, no, were you raising your hand? Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm just taking my glasses on and off.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Could you put the chart back up on the screen, please? Because I still don't have it. Thank you. Moving on to theme number 2, provisions outlining when appropriate for the chair to vacate.
Okay, excuse me. I think we need a decision on that so that we could.
Okay.
Was it the majority speaking that we follow the advice of?
I'm assuming that the 3 of us are still the committee and everybody else is advisors to the committee, and therefore I don't think there was any question that the majority are in favor of following your theme recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make it perfectly clear so that I don't assume anything. Thank you.
Chair, could I just mention one thing?
Yeah.
Can I get I made a comment there, and I want to make sure that that I was right there, that I wasn't making something up. But when I read what's been written in some of the comments about conflict of interest, it is tied back to campaign contributions. And can I get a thought from either you, John, or Debbie, that changing the definition to a personal or non-pecuniary conflict of interest wouldn't address that issue? Can I get a confirmation of that?
Yes, to you, through you, Mr. Chair, to you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with that comment. I don't believe that would somehow serve to create a personal or private interest in anybody, just because you receive campaign contributions within the limit that are disclosed under the Municipal Elections Act, that are permitted by law, that someone can then turn around and say that's a private and personal interest. You can't then vote for that person. It would just eradicate the whole system here in Ontario. And I believe that's what the cases from both of them that have come from BC. And the only reason I mentioned the 2 cases from BC is because they've been relied upon in other jurisdictions. Ontario hasn't had to deal with it here. So I pulled the cases, which I thought was the leading case, the one from the BC Court of Appeal. I can't even remember the name. I think it was King, that stood for that very proposition. So I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that there is no private or personal interest in voting or seeking to influence a matter simply because it might benefit someone who provided a campaign donation that's within the limit and was disclosed under the Municipal Elections Act.
Thank you. Debbie, did you want to add anything there?
Thank you, Chair. No, John's the expert in that area.
Okay, thank you. Neil.
Yeah, not on that issue, but I want to go back to, we were going through a list of recurring themes and we dealt with number 1. So are we recording a decision by the committee on each of those themes? Is that what we want to do to tick them off and take them off the plate? Or are we going to
I think that's what Carrie just, I think that's what Carrie
Okay,
just
so
did
that's
with the
what Carrie
first one.
said. So the decision on the first issue was that we take the advice of the experts and we're not putting it in. Is that
That's
correct?
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Okay, the second theme is provisions outlining when appropriate for the chair to vacate. And that did come up in a number of different comments. And I think from what I read is that basically most procedure bylaws ask the chair to vacate if they want to comment or move a motion, comment substantively or move a motion. Is that basically, I guess for our experts, is that what you would suggest? Debbie?
Thank you, Chair. It varies in bylaws, but John and I had this discussion. In the Municipal Act, it says the mayor has a vote. For a presiding officer, they can debate, they can make motions because they're a member like everybody else. However, I always advise that restraint is advisable because they are the facilitator of the meeting. So you can, I have seen bylaws where we say the chair doesn't make a motion unless they leave the chair. So that's going to be a decision that you as members of council will have to make. It can't go either way, but John may want to comment about the mayor does have a vote or the presiding officer does have a vote. So that I don't have a personal preference, to be honest. I've seen it both ways, and I've been the clerk where it has been both ways, and both have worked well. So that'll be, I can certainly provide you some wording if you decide that you want to maybe make sure that the chair, leaves the seat for a substantial motion. Or do they do the discussion at the end of the meeting, at the end of the discussion? I always advise on that. So that's kind of my, I think they should speak and debate last, let all the members have a discussion on that item. But their main role is to facilitate that meeting. That is the main role.
Thank you. John?
Mr. Chair, I agree with Debbie's comments. If I had a preference, I would probably say that the chair doesn't have to vacate. I think it's a bit artificial for him to step down, to have someone step in. Maybe it's a little easier on virtual, but at a live meeting, I think it's a little ponderous, and I think it just slows down meetings. So my preference would be that the chair could continue to move and speak to items, but like Debbie said, to do it perhaps at the end of the discussion once everyone else has had their opportunity to say something.
Neil, do you have something?
Yeah, just a couple of questions for either Debbie or John. You say you've seen it both ways. Is it usually in the larger municipalities with a larger council that the chair would step aside and allow people to vote? When I look at the size of our council being 7 people, the mayor's the only one who's elected by the entire community. So therefore has the trust and the faith of the majority of the community. And to force the mayor, who is the chair because of the position of being mayor, to step aside and not have a say in a vote, to me seems counterproductive to a democratic vote. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Debbie? Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Yes, Councillor. I actually was a longtime clerk for a municipality of 7, and because I was the clerk at Town of Whitby and also the clerk at the City of Pickering, and I spent 9 years also at the region of Durham. So I have worked with the small and the large. I don't agree. I agree with you when you say that the chair should not lose their vote. The chair should have a vote. The chair should always have a vote. But if you look at truly at Robert's rules, they say sometimes the chair should vote, if it's going to break a tie or anything like that. I think that's a little too restrictive. I think the chair still has a vote. It's up to the chair if they show their vote, though. If the chair looks around the room at 7 members and sees they have majority, the chair can just simply, that vote is carried, right? So we could certainly work at some wording so that it's very clear that the chair, the presiding officer, has a vote. Mm-hmm.
Kelly?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think that I think the head of, I think it'd be artificial. Like if I picture the flow of a meeting, it's hard enough already to try to facilitate. If I had to facilitate every time that I wanted to say anything, if I had to switch the chair over, and then like if I say 5 words, I don't. If I say 10 words, I do. Like it's kind of arbitrary when I would pass it over. I think that's artificial. I do like the concept, and I think primarily, with a few exceptions, I've waited till the end, but I think that should be written into the procedures bylaw that it's an expectation that the presiding officer waits till the end of a conversation. But we just have to we just have to make sure it's clear that it's not at the, like, we can go 2-3 rounds around all members of council, and if I waited to the end, I'd have nothing to say for potentially an hour. And so that doesn't work either. So I think we have to work it so that I actually have some sort of role. The head of council has some sort of role in when the discussion is going on. Because we could, like, I'm just thinking about it practically. I get that that as a chair of meeting, I should kind of stand back and let the will of council kind of to come out and not to really unduly influence that. I get that, but we have to have some sort of safety where I don't have to go 3 times around the room and I can't say anything until the very final end. So if we can cover that balance off, I'm good with waiting. I might be the last person to speak in any given round. I think we have to, and I'm okay with that. I think that's appropriate. And for all counselors to understand that's the way it is, it kind of gives some parameters for me as well as the chair of a meeting, which I welcome having, but it also gives some expectation on the part of counselors as well. That's my thoughts anyway. Just trying to be like picturing how it will actually work. And I think it'd be difficult to explain to citizens actually what's going on if I'm actually removing myself as chair, somebody else is going, and I don't see that being smooth at all.
So I waited till the end to make my comments. Anyhow, to Neil's point, I don't think, Neil, anybody was suggesting that the mayor not participate in discussions or have a vote in discussions. I think they were just saying that as a facilitator, he should not be making his comments during the discussion or making the motion, bringing the motion forward to begin with as the chair, as the facilitator. And I don't disagree with that particular take on it. So bringing a motion forward is somewhat different than making comments, and maybe they should be treated as 2 separate items, not one. And if we have 2 rounds of questioning and the mayor has his comments at the end of the first round, I'm not sure if that's truly the facilitator's role either, or if he should be waiting till the very end. And Debbie, you have gone through this, you said, with a couple of different councils, and what are your thoughts now that we've had our discussion? Or what are your thoughts?
I through the chair to the comments from the mayor. Yes, that I've seen it quite often where they'll go the first round and the mayor will add their comments. Anytime there's a significant motion, most chairs I've seen will vacate the chair if it's a significant motion. Quite often I don't see chairs making motions. It's not a common practice. It really isn't. Usually, you'll have a member of council that will move the motion that the chair's kind of thinking of. It's not common for the chair to actually make the motion from the chair. As far as, putting into 2 separate, yes, I agree with that we could put the wording in, on how motions are handled and how the discussions are handled. So that's quite easy to do language-wise within the procedure bylaw. Mm-hmm.
Did you have something, Andy, or you just move? Okay. So as far as going forward then with this particular point, did you want to provide the wording, recommend the wording now, Debbie, or is that something that we will follow up with before our next get together?
Through the chair, I do have wording, but I'm probably not quite ready to flash up on the screen. So if you want the decision to be that, that I will provide the language for the next review based on the discussion to have two components of how to handle motions and how to handle discussion. That good?
Is everybody in agreement with that, Kelly and Neil?
Well, just one comment. I think if this committee can cross off, like we have two different ideas out there right now, that the head of council waits until the end of the discussion versus the head of council waits till he or she speaks about a motion at the end of all the councillors on each round. I think we need to provide direction to Debbie on that part first, because that's different. So I'm completely comfortable with being the last person to speak on each round. I'm not comfortable with not being able to take part in the discussion if this goes more than one round. If it's just a one round thing, obviously, but if it's going more than that and we have this significant discussion, I'm not comfortable with the head of council not having a role in that person's turn around the horseshoe. That doesn't make sense to me. So I think if we need to provide some direction to Debbie on that one.
Neil?
Yeah, I agree with that, with what Kelly's saying. I think the chair of the meeting, whoever it is, should get comments on each round. But I am also of the opinion that if the chair is putting forward a motion at the time where the chair feels that he or she needs to put a motion in, that they should vacate the chair to make that motion and assign somebody else the chair. And then that chair would follow by the same set of rules to comment at the end of each round of discussion on that. And I see that, and Debbie, I'll take your advice on that. Is that something where rather than somebody chairing the whole meeting, if let's say Kelly were to put in a motion and vacate the chair and put somebody else in the chair for that round, are they able to take the chair over again after that vote is done, or is it something has to be done for the whole meeting?
Through the chair, no, normally you can put it in the wording that in the event the chair vacates, the deputy mayor, or there's various language. How we did it at Whitby was if the chair wanted, the mayor wanted to make a motion, he would vacate, and he or she, and the deputy mayor would assume the chair. In the event the deputy mayor wasn't there, then council would make that decision. As soon as the vote is done, chair goes back to presiding officer role.
And I completely agree with that process. Yep.
Okay, as we've got a plan to go forward with that one then. Theme 3 was, by the way, you don't have to put this thing up anymore. I finally got everything running here, so I can see the themes. So theme 3 is the 5-minute time limit for delegations should be 10 minutes. And once again, that came up often. I guess comments from Debbie and John on that. Is that kind of standard practice?
Mr. Chair, my view is 5 minutes is more than enough time for someone to put forward their view on anything. You don't need to have double the time or triple the time. I think it's just wasted effort. Someone could put together a very persuasive letter that advocates very well for them, and then they can just speak to the main points. 5 minutes, in my view, is more than enough time. I don't think it should be extended to 10.
Through the chair, I agree with John in that. I believe 5 minutes is an appropriate delegation time, and that is really kind of a standard through a lot of procedure bylaws. Every municipality is going to have their own decision, but I do see 5 minute tends to be what councils are comfortable with. Mm-hmm.
Neil, you put your hand up there, did
Well, my
Councillor.
question was going to be for Debbie. What seems to be the norm going across the province and other municipalities? And you've answered that quite well. If 5 minutes is a standard, that's fine. We just have to make sure that if they had letters or anything else that backs that up, to John's point, that we get that in the hands of council so that all the councillors have the opportunity to review those documents. And then the delegations are just presenting those issues neatly and succinctly in a 5-minute presentation. And I think that allows for more delegates to come to a particular meeting, and it allows for us to get the business of the township done in a timely fashion.
Kelly, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think 5 minutes is lots of time for us. Usually when they go over and they go to the 10 minutes, in my experience, they're just repeating the things that they said in the first 5 minutes. Like we've had it over and over again where people don't really need 10 minutes. Often none of us need 10 minutes to say what we need to say. So I'm good with 5.
I went through quite a few procedure bylaws reviewed from various towns, and there were an awful lot of 10 minutes. So that, you know, I was kind of, the one I was looking at this morning was Newmarket, and it's 10 minutes. And there were a number of others that were also 10 minutes. So most people aren't going to use the 10 minutes, but I think we should allow it because some people don't speak as succinctly as others, and it takes them that long to make their point. And we're not all lawyers. So I would tend to think that there was a lot of people asked for 10 minutes. I think that it's not something that would be that difficult to include in the procedure bylaw. It's my own personal.
Through you, Chair, if is there a way that we could do a 5 minutes with the okay of council for extending that? Have you seen that before? Like sometimes if we get like sometimes it's 5 is tons of time and people take 10 anyway, but sometimes it's a little bit more meaty, and maybe there needs to be a mechanism to waive that.
Debbie, go ahead.
Through the chair, there's 2 ways you can do that, Mayor, is you can put it in the procedure bylaw that if the time is to be extended, it can be a majority vote, which is easier because if you wanted to do it, if it's not outlined in the procedure bylaw, then it's a motion to suspend the rules, takes 2/3 to extend the debate. I like it nice and clean that if they go over the 5 minutes, that you have the authority just as a majority vote. Most times I see the mayor will just do it by consensus, but in the procedure bylaw, we put in the provision right in there that if to extend the 5 minutes, just takes a majority vote. That's quite common.
Carrie?
That is the way the proposed bylaw is written, that it's 5 minutes and may be extended at the will of council. That's what we put in there.
Okay. Yeah, I think Newmarket was 10 minutes with an extension at the will of council. So it's just a matter of
I put the community delegations, we kept it at 10 minutes, but with just delegations on a specific matter, we limited it to 5 with the possibility of an extension, thinking that was fair.
Okay. Well, my concern with the 5-minute rule is that if somebody is in the middle of doing a presentation of some sort and we have to stop them at 5 minutes to do to get a council vote, then it disrupts the whole flow of their presentation and extends things even more. So giving them 10 minutes to begin with seems like it would probably be the easiest with the flow. And as I say, most people aren't going to use it anyhow. Most people don't use 5 minutes, they use 2 or 3. So it's a matter of every once in a while delegations come along that require a little longer, and I hate to see it stop. Andy?
Thank you, through your chair. I think the 5-minute rule is a reasonable one. I can't recall at our council meeting in my years here or in other council meetings where the mayor or the chair has been that restrictive, or the clerk. It's typically, I've only seen the rule come into place when someone goes on for 7, 8 minutes and starts repeating themselves, that the chair then uses the rule saying, you know, you had 5 minutes, we've given you a little bit of leniency, and we're going to ask you to wrap it up. So I think if you go to the 10, then you tend to get into a little bit longer. And to your point, Councillor McElwain, I think the majority do stay under the 5. So that's what we should stick to. And then I think it's a matter of, you know, as the presiding chair, you know, 30 seconds, a minute late, a little bit longer. That's a leniency that happens at all meetings.
To me, sorry, Chair,
sorry.
if I could just add for a sec. To me, this isn't a huge deal. Like, I don't really care that much if we do go to 10. This is not why our meetings are inefficient. There's other reasons for that. Community delegations haven't been the reason why our meetings go on and on and on. So I don't think this fixes anything. So if we heard from a number of people that 10 minutes was important to them. I don't know what you think, Neil. It hasn't been an issue one way or the other. We kind of have bigger fish to fry than this.
Yeah, I think we spent enough time on it. And if, we talked at our first ad hoc committee, this isn't a hill I'm willing to die on. So if people need 10 minutes, if that's what's going to make everybody happy, let's give them the 10 minutes and we'll cut them off. We know that most people are going to speak for less than that, but I would be hard pressed as a counselor to have somebody look at me after 10 minutes and say, we're asking to go further. I'm not going to allow it. 10 minutes to me is, I can say a lot in 10 minutes. And I think that's more than enough time for a presentation.
Do we have a consensus then to go change it to 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I also like the consistency with the community delegations. It's simpler to explain to people.
Yep.
So I'm okay with the 10, Kirk.
Perfect. Thank you. Item 4, minutes should be more detailed, include questions and debate. So once again, I just as a comment, I know Carrie's comments are always on this topic are always we are instructed to take the minutes without comment or no, I can't remember what exactly the words are, but I think that means personal comments. It doesn't include comments of the people involved in the debates. And I do find that the minutes themselves don't have, I mean, they have the motion and they have the result, but they have absolutely no content for somebody wanting to go back and read through and find out what happened. And to ask people and to tell people to go back, well, you can go back and review the video. Sitting through a 3-hour video to get an answer to something is a big ask. So my preference would be to have more complete minutes. Debbie and or John, do you have comments on that? Debbie, please.
Through the chair, the clerk is required to do the minutes without note or comment. That is in the Municipal Act, and without note or comment means you aren't recording the debate of members of council. That is never in the minutes, the debate back and forth of members of council. Yes, you can put some highlights if there's like a 3-hour discussion with a lot of, discussion. You could say, I would normally put detailed discussion ensued with the following key highlights, but you never get into verbatim or recording the debates of members of council. That's just not considered the standard of without note or comment. Mm-hmm.
John?
Mr. Chair, I totally agree with Debbie's comments. I don't think the minutes are the proper place for any kind of verbatim accounting of what, a recounting of what happened at the meeting. This isn't Hansard. Your clerk can't write that fast. I think anyone who uses the minutes will go back to read what was the decision that was made, what was that, and if they really want to hear something about the debate, that they can use the minutes to track where it may be on the recording. So I totally agree with Debbie's comments on it. I think the less in the minutes, just recording the very salient, pertinent points is what's required by the Municipal Act, and I believe that's the best practice.
Ian or Kelly, any comments?
Yeah, I don't think there's any action to take on this. We've been told from day one that this is the appropriate way to do it, and I have no questions about it. I have no concerns.
Neil?
My key question was answered by Debbie in the first minute, and that was the fact that we're following the Municipal Act. And John, you made a great point that this is not the Hansard records. They have an entire library of Hansard records in the House of Parliament, and this township would have to build its own library to hold our minutes from our meetings and ad hoc meetings. So the highlights is what you're after, and the decisions is what you tried to capture. And I think our minutes are sufficient for that.
If I might, I don't think anybody is suggesting that discussions be recorded verbatim, but as Debbie described, just covering the salient points as at a high level, and what was discussed at a high level is would make the minutes a lot more readable in many situations. I've felt the same way in the past. Andy?
Thank you, through your chair. I spent some time looking through a number of municipalities' minutes over the last month. I think our minutes actually provide additional, more information than the majority of minutes that I see. I think the challenge being that as soon as we ask the clerks to kind of summarize or provide a highlight, then that is their interpretation of what the highlight was and not the highlight of the council discussion. We already have challenges in our meeting minutes from several of our councillors saying that's not clearly what I said or interpreted. And so there it becomes a subjective matter and not a, here's what the report was, here's the recommendation, here's the motion, and here's what the decision was. I think that is the requirement of the Municipal Act for the council recordings. In today's age, there are, every one of our council meetings is now on YouTube. You go to our website, you can click on to that meeting agenda item, and the YouTube actually jumps to that location. So it is not a difficult challenge for people to go to one specific report and find out what time period and what the discussion is. I think you're putting an additional burden. The amount of meetings that our clerks are currently recording for with all the advisory committees, the subcommittees, is an enormous task. And we've already had some of our councillors question why minutes are coming a month or two behind. And that is just because of the workload that they currently already have with all the committees that we have.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have a pretty good indication of which way this one goes. So the minutes will be left, will be going forward as they are currently recorded. The one detail in there that was maybe could be added was including any questions. I don't know if that, Carrie, I guess you'd be better to answer that question than me, but if a councillor has a specific questions during a discussion, can that be recorded?
Well, with all due respect, our meetings are 5 and 6 hours long. If I recorded every question that every counselor asked, our minutes would be extremely long and extremely complicated. And sometimes it's very difficult to even understand the questions posed. I would say no. I would say actually our minutes should probably include less than they do. However, we do provide some kind of a indication. In some ways, in public meetings, we tend to provide a little more in that those could be part of an LPAT or something. But generally speaking, we summarize the discussions, but we don't individualize or center out one counselor over another. It would be far too difficult.
Okay, thank you. We shall leave that one like it is then, and not make the minutes any more detailed. So point 5. Recruitment, selection, and appointments of citizens to advisory committees. Apparently, it seems to be consistent with what other municipalities do, does not have to be included in the procedure bylaw. And once again, I'll go back to Debbie and John for comment, and then we can have discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'll start and Debbie will probably pick up on it. I just don't think that this is something that should be covered in your procedure bylaw. You can have a policy on this. It's not something to do with your meeting, so it shouldn't be captured in there.
Through the chair, totally agree with John's comments. I prefer to see it in a policy of how an appointment policy. I prefer that rather than in the procedure bylaw.
Given that, Andy, what policy do we include this?
So it's based on past practices. This has been a long-standing process of how we've appointed. Going back, Councillor McElwain, all the way to your start back in 2006. The mayors that I've worked under in this municipality since 2006 have made the appointments of the council members, and then the staff have received the applications of the public, which also provides confidential and private information of their individuals. And so therefore staff review them based on the terms of reference that are set out by council. And we make a recommendation to council, and council then appoints through resolution those recommendations of people going on to the advisory committees.
Okay. I think one of the things that came up in a number of comments, and this is specifically about the appointment of citizens to advisory committees we're talking about right now. And yes, staff makes the choice, and I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that, staff going through the process. But I think what people are asking for is council to have a review of that choice and understanding who did not get chosen and why, and some understanding of why the committee members were chosen over some other committee applicants. So I guess as the representatives of the public, the council feel that there is a certain amount of responsibility on their part to make sure that the people representing them on advisory committees are the best people to do it. Go ahead, Andy.
I think the discussion there is around the fact that several councillors do not believe that staff are working on the same situation of trying to provide the best people onto the advisory committees. We have no self-interest in it, and who we award. We look at the terms of reference set out by council as to who the committee makeups are, review those applications, and then appoint based on a discussion with the staff in those committees. What are they working on? What are the terms of reference? And then make that recommendation to council. if we were to go and provide every one of the applicants information, we would have to go into closed session. And then in my personal belief, we're going to get into the situation of one counselor wanting to have one person on the committee versus another person on the committee because they know them differently than the other. This is a way that staff provide that recommendation, review the applications based on what they have submitted, and make that recommendation to council.
Debbie and John, do you have comments there at all on that? John? Neil or Kelly? Neil.
Yeah, I think we've dealt with it. Our experts here that have been brought in to help us with this, I think we're doing it the appropriate way. If we want to draft a policy, I think that's for another place and another time for a discussion on that. I think we can stroke this issue off our list and move on to the next one.
Okay, we haven't dealt with it. That's the problem. We've dealt with it maybe in the procedure bylaw, but we haven't dealt with it. If we're going to have a procedure written someplace, then we should say what we're going to do as a step going forward and not just delete it as a topic of discussion. So what, Andy, how would you recommend we take it forward?
My recommendation from a staff's consideration would be the fact that everybody is now appointed till the end of this term of council. And that I would suggest that the next term of council, if they so wish to develop a policy, they would ask staff with the start of the next term of council to develop a policy for the next term of council's approval, based on the fact that we've done all the appointments for this term of council.
Okay. It's, yeah. Kelly, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, its comments are pretty simple for me. This is a staff, in my mind, this is a staff role all the way. I don't think anything good will come out with making this process political. Selection of counselors, that's a bit different, but this one here, public notice is given by the clerk's office, widely communicated out over traditional media and other media, and anything besides this would be not the right role of council, I believe.
The only comment I would make there is I don't think it's a matter of making a political decision, Kelly. I think it's a matter of making the decision that, because that council feels is the best for the people they represent, and that isn't necessarily political, it's common sense. And I think it needs to be addressed in some way. My problem is that we keep coming to us or comments that the committee members are chosen by staff and approved by council. Well, we don't have a choice in approving by council because it's the only people presented to us. And so council aren't going to say, well, no, I don't want him on there or her on there, because that is, you don't have any other alternatives presented to you. And so that, you know, as long as council are approving it, then council, I would think, or I feel, should have some input on who is on the committee that you're approving. And that's my own take on it. Yes, Andy.
I understand that the discussion about not knowing any other people. I find that very interesting when staff are actually receiving direct questions from councillors of why so-and-so was not put on the committee. So they are privy to information that an individual that may be an applicant is sharing with them, but isn't aware of any of the other folks that have applied. So I don't truly believe that it's a closed situation. The fact that it's been our experience that many of the councillors know who's applied for certain things because they've had conversations with the councillors prior to the discussion.
Yeah, I've certainly had questions after the discussion has been finished, and I've had people come back to me and say, I don't understand why I wasn't chosen, that kind of thing. And I agree. Eventually we find out, but not at the time when we're approving the committee.
When
So-
staff have been asked by councillors prior to the recommendation.
Okay, not by me. So anyhow, that's my concern, is we're coming out of this without any process in place for the future. I don't mind leaving it out of the procedure bylaw, but I don't like just ignoring it. So I would like a comment in there someplace to show that. Andy.
I think your question to me earlier was identifying a process that staff feel that would address this. I think the discussion around the policy matter, as Debbie and John have stated, it's not a procedural matter, it's a policy matter. That if the action of this is that at the beginning of the term of the next term of council, that a policy would be reviewed and developed and agreed upon by the next council, would be an action that I think would be appropriate.
Okay. Everybody in agreement with that as going forward? Thank you. And now the selection process of councillor representatives to external and internal committees and boards. And once again, the advice seems to be consistent with what other municipalities do, does not have to be included in the procedure bylaw. And that, yeah, I suppose some municipalities, that's the case. Some of them, it is in a procedure bylaw, so it varies. Debbie and John, your comments on this one?
Through the chair, you're right, it does vary with municipalities. My experience is it's always been a separate process, different from not included in the procedure bylaw. Mhm.
Same comment, Mr. Chair. I don't believe it should be in the procedure bylaw.
Neil and Kelly, do you have comments?
I agree with them. There's no place for it in the procedural bylaw. And does the Municipal Act cover this at all, Debbie? Is it in there? How committees are struck, and I think it's for a different committee and a different meeting to discuss, and not here in the procedural bylaw.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Dunsmore, I don't believe it is covered directly in the Municipal Act, and each municipality may determine how to do it in its own way, depending on its past practice, its culture, you know, how it feels it should go about it, but it's not covered explicitly in the Municipal Act.
Just to follow up, Craig. Yeah, so that was my impression too. It's at the discretion of each individual municipality, and it seems to be the practice that's gone on since the inception of this township. So I'm happy.
Kelly, any comments?
I think that maybe this item 6 and item 5 should go together. And if the next council wants to make changes to that policy about how citizens are brought on and how councillor reps are selected for each committee, that probably should go together, because those two groups of people are going to work together. You know, I just kind of inherited the process that I was given, that I put the recommendation to council, and council approves it. But if the next council wants to do things differently, it would help the head of council as well as all members of council to have something written down, so it's not something that's a source of contention for 4 years. So it would be good to see a process that's laid out, and if the next council if that's important to the next council, it should be pulled into their strategic plan about something that they want to accomplish. It's not in ours right now, so I think that's how we would deal with that one.
I don't agree with you on that one, Kelly. I don't think two of them should be pulled together, first of all, because they're very different. And number two is with council members on advisory committees. That should be happening very early in the process. They don't have time to go through the strategic plan and come up with rules at that point, because advisory councils are already struck by the time the strategic plan is completed. And so it should be done before that. There should be a process in place. And to be honest, you didn't really, the process you handle is not the same as the process of the previous mayor. The previous mayor discussed things during our preliminary meetings, and had council and had the new councillors and the existing councillors have discussions on the various roles, and people volunteered, and it was chosen during those first meetings, not dictated by the mayor. And that's quite different than it is now. Yes, council approved your what the council or the members that you chose, but on the other hand, the three councillors you put on every advisory committee, of course, agreed with you. So you got a majority. The people that don't get put on advisory committees don't agree, but it doesn't matter because they're not the majority. So yes, it was council approved, but it wasn't 100% council approved. So it's not a good process the way it is. And I think it needs to be addressed before the next council starts, not after.
Well, through you, Chair, I don't know how much I want to get into this. We all received an email from Councillor Kittredge today, which makes quite a few interesting comments. And I know that kind of dialogue is going on, that kind of dynamic is going on. It's incumbent on the head of council to ensure that councillors on committees are going to make sure that the citizens that volunteer hundreds of hours of their time have a positive experience. I take that role seriously, and that's really important to me. And I can't in good conscience have certain members of council on certain committees because I don't have that body of work that's been done in the past that demonstrate to me that things will go the way that we want them to go for the experiences of citizen members. So what should be, as far as the process goes, and what actually will happen with the dynamics that we have right now are two very different things. And the most important thing to me is that citizens who volunteer their time on our committees have the kind of experience that they want to have, and we can get good value from them. That's what matters the most to me. And that's what has led me to recommend certain councillors on certain committees and certain councillors not on other committees. And that's why I've made decisions that I've made, and council has approved it. I'd love it if that wasn't the way I felt like I had to do things, but over the last 6 years, things speak for themselves, and I've made decisions with the support of council, and I can't see how it can be anything other than that at the point that we're at right now.
Andy.
Just to clarify a point with regards to previous mayors, I know in my first few years with the previous mayor, I had other councillors come to me concerned that they were not on certain committees or had roles on advisory committees, and they were not on the presiding vote back in that term of council. And I've also had to have interactions with previous mayor with regards to having a councillor removed off of an advisory committee because we've had all 7 members of the advisory committee, volunteer members come to me and the mayor stating they were either quitting the advisory committee, or that council member needed to be resigning from the committee or removed from the committee. So your experience that you're talking about the last couple of years, Councillor McElwain, is no different than I've had other councillors come to me because they were not on the presiding majority in their impressions in previous years either. So it is a continuing situation. It just depends on the majority of voted council at the time of the vote.
Okay, having been in 4 different terms of council and gone through it 4 different times, I know that the first 2 were very different than the last 2. And in the first 2, I got on an advisory committee. That's all, instead of one person getting on 3, each person got on 1, and that's the way it should be. And doing it the way it is today, with some councillors getting 2 or 3 of their choice, number one, you're pretty much assuring their vote on everything that you want. But on number 2 is that there are some councillors that are not going to be as happy as others, and you're going to end up with a council that's split, as you have. And so you're building a team requires building a team, not building a part of a team and having them opposite the other half of the team. And that's where we sit right now. And so I just think before we start a second council, we need to have a policy that addresses this. Whether it doesn't have to be in a procedure by law, it has to be someplace. And that's why I don't want to leave this topic until there is something in place that says it's going to be addressed by some mechanism. Yes, Kelly.
So first comment about the team. You need members of council who believe you should be working as a team. If you don't have that foundation that we should be working as a team, or it's an uphill battle, and that's what we have right now. The second thing that I just wanted to mention is that this ad hoc committee has responsibility of what goes in our procedures bylaw, and that's it. So if we can't make a decision, we can suggest that something is looked at, but it's outside of our scope. We're dealing with the draft of a procedures bylaw. So we don't have the other 4 members of council to have any discussion outside of this. That's how I'm interpreting the role of the ad hoc committee.
I agree with you 100%. That is our role. But Carrie did ask for an action at the end before we move on to the next one. And so I'm asking for an action. And how are we going to address this? So what are we recommending going forward? And I would like to recommend that we put a process in place to address council representatives on external and internal committees and boards before the beginning of the next council, before the end of this council term.
Sorry, through you, Chair, if I may.
Yes.
We don't have the authority to recommend that. The only action we can take is does it go in the procedural bylaw or does it not? That's as far as the limits of this ad hoc committee go in my opinion.
So the last comment then that Andy had made doesn't go there either.
Oh, we all made a few comments outside of the scope of the discussion today, but as far as action to take, the action to take is whether or not this goes in or doesn't go in our procedures bylaw.
Okay. And it shouldn't. I agree. We just need an action. So it doesn't go in the procedure bylaw, and we will take forward an action to council to get a process in place. So the next item is the delivery of the agenda to councillors, and the timing of the meetings is too tight. Once again, we had reference or a lot of points in the various comments recommending from a week to 10 days for agenda delivery before the meetings. Looking at a lot of other procedure bylaws in other towns, that seems 7 days seems to be pretty standard. So once again, Debbie and John, do you have any comments on that?
Sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, John.
Mr. Chair, I was going to say my experience, and I look after, I think, about a dozen municipalities as council. I'm not sure that any of them have as long as a week between the agenda and the council meeting. I stand to be corrected, but I think all of them are at most 4 or 5 days. Here's the difficulty. You could have a longer time, and then what you're going to find is you're going to have urgent matters that come forward that haven't met the deadline, and then you're going to have to do addendums, and then you're going to be criticized. Why is this on an addendum? Why didn't you have it on the regular meeting? So you're not going to win there, and I think the best way to do it is to just leave it the way it is right now. And I don't want to make it sound like I just keep saying everything is fine, let's just leave it the way it is, but some things don't need to change. And I think if you do try to advance it, then you're gonna meet those instances where you're just not going to be able to get something on there, and then you're going to have an addendum, and you have too many of those, and people are going to complain about that.
Debbie?
Through the chair, very similar comments to John. It's really basically what works for your municipality. Every municipality is a little different in timing of agendas. The other big thing that really affects that is your resources. Like, can your staff physically do a turnaround? Because I know when I had to go to having a week notice, we did it with a new term of council because we just couldn't get those wheels fast enough. When you look at, you got to backtrack all your reports and everything. So I think that is a staff resource issue. You're going to have to really look at if you want to change the timing. Quite often I'll see it the Wednesday for the Monday meeting rather than the Friday. That's probably a little more doable than the Friday for the meeting, but I think you really have to lean on your staff for this one on what they physically can manage as far as turnaround.
Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to duplicate Debbie's comments. At the end of the day, when prior to this term of council, we started initiating the last term of council. When I started here, the agendas went out Friday afternoon for a Monday afternoon meeting. Councillors were given the weekend. I do not believe that some comments have come back that it's the ability for council to be able to get the package, read the package, go out to the community and get their feelings about the recommendations. That should be a councillor's responsibility throughout the year of getting the feel and desires of the community. We are now pretty much getting the council agendas out on a Thursday morning and in many cases on a Wednesday afternoon, depending on the clerk's resourcing and time. I'm not even going to just say that this is only on the clerks from a resourcing. This is a resourcing of your senior team and your middle management team. I think you'll see that the many of the reports are written by your senior team because we don't have enough staff at the below the senior team to be able to write and process the reports. Right now, our process is draft reports are to be into Carrie and I on the Friday. For us, Carrie and I and Lisa will typically try to review those on the weekend so that we can report back to staff about what's missing, what's needed, oh, by the way, you didn't talk to finance to get their comments in. They then have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday till noon to get the reports completed. And in many cases, they're waiting on an agreement from a developer or something from a consultant, and we're chasing them down. Agendas are, all reports need to be in by noon on Wednesday. And I know Carrie chases after me like crazy, trying to making sure staff are meeting that deadline. And so it is truly a resourcing piece. At the end of the day, if you'd like to see it for a longer period, we are going to need more resources to be able to make those timeframes doable.
Neil or Kelly, any comments? Neil?
Yeah, I appreciate John's comments, and he was talking about 7 days often creates problems with last minute things having to come into the agenda. Sitting on a board of directors, I've seen that happen when you get a week for the agenda, and the day of the meeting, the CAO sheepishly comes into the meeting and drops brightly colored yellow papers on your desk and says, "I'm sorry for the table drop, but this couldn't get done in time," or "this came up at the last minute," and then you're left juggling yourself. So I find what we're doing now works fairly well. And if there's ever something that's really contentious, we always have the right to put a motion forward to defer it to the next meeting so we can have further discussion. So I'm quite happy with what we're doing.
Through
Kelly?
Chair, for 10 years for me being there, and I've never had an issue with being prepared for a council meeting with when we get our agenda. So I think sometimes I think maybe initially when I was a counselor and I thought I had to read every single word and understand exactly what the engineers were talking about when they talked about some of these very specific things. I felt a little overwhelmed for sure, but when I kind of got into the role of council and the types of questions we should be asking to provide the right kind of governance and oversight and focus on results and that kind of stuff, I didn't see it as an issue ever. So I'm okay with the way it is, especially when you're considering we have very few people who prepare these agendas every time before council. And I'm not interested in bringing in more staff to help with that. So I think it's good the way it is. And I was going to just echo what Councillor Dunsmore talked about. Councillors never should feel like they can ask for a deferral, because all we need is, if the four of us feel that we haven't enough time to digest something, we can always ask for a deferral. That's always in our right. So I think it's okay the way it is.
For the most part, I don't have a large problem. Wednesdays in particular, if we get it by Wednesday, I'm a lot happier. Where I have an issue is that if there is something comes up where I want to contact somebody on staff to ask questions, it's very difficult to do it with a Thursday delivery because a lot of staff are gone Friday afternoon. Monday morning is staff meeting. We're not allowed to contact staff directly. We have to go through Andy, so it adds extra delays. So I find it difficult nowadays to call somebody up and ask any questions. Just getting a hold of them between Thursday and Monday, and now with Monday council meetings being during the afternoon instead of the evening on Monday, it even shortens the timeline more. So, if we get them a day earlier, even it would be a benefit, I find. A week would be nice, no question about it. I'd love to have a week, but having addendums added and later. I mean, we're on the Groves thing, and we get addendums all the time on the Groves from the Groves Hospital, but that it's a lot easier to read an addendum at the last minute than it is to try and get questions answered at the last minute on the whole agenda. So that's my take on it. It would be nice to have a couple of days, 1 day, 2 days longer to go through the agenda and make sure you are prepared, that you understand staff's motions, etc. That's my take. Yes, Andy.
Councillor McWayne, I'd like to know how many questions, because we speak at senior team that we make sure there is a call from a councillor, an email on a Monday morning regarding the council agenda. We're trying to address it right away on the Monday morning. And quite honestly, it's my experience, we have 1 or 2 councillors that do reach out to staff, but the majority of council do not reach out to staff prior to the council meeting.
Okay. So as far as the delivery of agenda, would there be an attempt to get them out by Wednesday? At least? Yes, Andy.
As I've mentioned earlier, even a day earlier puts on a huge strain on our staff. And we would be looking to resource additional staffing to be able to get it out, even an additional day at this time. Wednesday afternoon, if we can get it out at the end of the day, is as fast as we can get it out. And the majority of times it's Thursday morning. If council wishes to change that by 24 hours, if we're getting it out by noon on Monday, that is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday until lunchtime on Monday to be able to read it. And when we do go back to our regular schedules outside of the emergency, then they have until the 7 o'clock Monday evening to read the agenda. We are cognizant that we try to manage the agendas so that we're not putting out 800-page reports all the time. We are even trying to manage it by saying some of the larger master plans are more significant discussions or reports. We're doing a workshop in advance where there's no decisions, where we're giving you the report on a Wednesday or Thursday for a workshop. And then coming back a month or two later with only some changes as requested for those reports.
Okay. So I guess the action would be no action by the sound of things. Is that agreement, Neil and Kelly? Okay. Open mic. Allowing members of the public an opportunity to address council. Okay. I didn't remember seeing that very honestly, but worded like that. But Debbie or John, do you have comments on that particular theme?
Through the chair, I think John and I are both in agreement. It's none of the means. I'm not a proponent of the open mic. I find the agenda should be set for council for you to deal with your business. I think that's the process. Sometimes when you get the open mic, it can derail your meeting. It's totally up to you as a council whether you decide you want the open mic. If you do decide to go to an open mic process, then I recommend a specific time and a time limit. So whether you do your open mic at the beginning of the meeting for 10 minutes and everybody has, and no action gets taken from those open mic. It's simply for members of the council. I don't recommend it at a council. I find councils very formal. If you are going to do this process, which, it wouldn't be something I would recommend as a clerk. If you do it, then it should be at a committee level only with a really strict time frame.
John, any comments?
Mr. Chair, I have nothing to add. I totally agree with what Debbie's comments are. It's your meeting, your agenda, and I think the difficulty with having an open mic session is it makes it participatory, and it could possibly hijack things that might be happening at your meeting and your business. So I think council should always be in control of it. It's not to say that anyone's going to hijack it. I didn't mean to maybe I shouldn't have used that word, but I'm not a big proponent of open mics, and I again, if you're going to do it, then have a very strict timeline, and maybe ask for the presentation beforehand as well, so you can see what's coming, and you're not taken totally by surprise or blindsided.
Kelly and or Neil, any questions?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I don't think open mic is a good concept. If we had no other mechanisms for people to provide input, doing 4 town, once COVID is over again, we'll go back to the 4 town halls a year, and we allow for open mics then, and people can ask whatever questions they want, complain, vent, they can do whatever they want, and they do. That's a better place for an open mic. council meetings get a sliver of the population, and I don't think that'll ever change. There's certain and we've noticed this too, is certain people will come to council and be involved in council, but that doesn't at all reflect the kind of the fabric of our community as much as who go to town halls when there's things on that we're going to be talking about that they're interested in. So personally, I think that's why the town halls were created, to provide an outlet for people to talk about what frustrates them, what their concerns are. Staff are there and then they can address them, but it doesn't kind of push the agenda of council out of the way. So I like it the way it is, allowing our community delegation process. I think that's a good hybrid, but provides a little bit of parameters to it, and still people can get to a meeting if we don't have something on the agenda through that avenue.
Neil, do you have
Yeah, I was just going to mention, you know, before COVID, Kelly's done a great job with his town hall meetings, and I've attended most of them. And that's the opportunity for people to voice new business and to voice their opinion on what's going on, and that they haven't got the answers that they thought they should get, and they usually get them there at that meeting, or they get a follow-up. And to me, that's the place for something like this. I've been a part of too many meetings in other organizations where somebody says, well, we'll open it up to the floor. Is there anybody out there who has it? And anybody and everybody who's got a grievance takes over the meeting from there on in, and we can't get through the rest of the agenda. So I think it's a very dangerous road to go down. My door is always open. People can always call me, and I'm more than happy to talk to them. And I think with even virtually, Kelly's been doing it on the radio, and people can call in or send in questions. So that's their open mic time, and I don't think it belongs in a council meeting.
I just wanted to follow up. Kelly, you just mentioned about delegations, and then you said, and I can't quote you exactly what you said here, but there was an opportunity there for new business, and our current delegation process doesn't really allow new business. So I'm wondering what you were referring to there.
Yeah, and Carrie can correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole reason why we did community delegations is for those items that don't have an avenue already. So we're not going to talk about things that are going to come up in a land planning issue, or we're not going to talk about other things. But if individuals put something that is within the scope of the township on their form, their community delegation form, they have 10 minutes it goes through the clerk, and they have 10 minutes to speak on items that aren't on our agenda. That's correct, right, Carrie?
Sorry, yes, that's absolutely correct. We have a form, it's on our website, they fill it out. Like for instance, the Wellington Federation of Agriculture comes once every term of council, or once every twice, to let council know what they're doing. We haven't had any during COVID. We sort of put them off in the beginning because we were just trying to get the business of council done, but you'll notice we're starting to get them back again, where they fill out the forms. We know what their expectations are, and they come to either committee or council, whichever we can accommodate.
Okay. Okay, because I agree, just having a full open mic is a dangerous thing to do, I think. So I don't disagree with that. So I guess I think we're in agreement that open mics are not something we want to add to the procedure bylaw. Inclusion of new business, allowing members of council to bring up matters not on the agenda. So Debbie and John, your comments on this one before we start?
Through the chair, I think I'd need a little more clarity on this one, because is it new business that's requesting staff to report on, or is it new business that they're expecting a motion to be passed. I'm just wondering what the context of this one was, if I could just have that clarity, and then I can give you a better answer.
Carrie, please.
Through you, I think through the comments, what I understood is that members of council want to raise matters that are not on the agenda. Our current bylaw indicates that members of council can only speak to matters on the agenda, and through new business, they're allowed to bring up things that are not on the agenda and not currently perhaps before council or in staff's hopper.
Okay. I'm not a fan of new business being brought up at a council meeting. The reason is because the whole premise of the Municipal Act is being open, accountable, transparent. So if new items are brought up, then you haven't given that public notice to members of the council, to members of the public to come and speak on that item. So, you know, if it's just for information purposes, then perhaps you could put it, you know, word the new business a certain way. But if you're expecting council to take action on an item, then no, I don't believe it's a good practice, because you're just not giving that public notice component. And, you know, where I have seen it used is if you have a standing committee and a member of council wants staff to report back on a matter, well, then it requires that majority vote. So there's the majority of council requesting staff to report on a matter. So no new item is actually brought up at council. I'm not sure if John agrees with me on that one, but yeah, I don't feel it's being open, accountable, transparent, and given the public notice that matter is going to be discussed.
Mr. Chair, I totally agree again with Debbie's comments on that. For the same reason, I didn't think the open mic was a great idea. It's more of the same. You have an agenda. It's supposed to be for certain business that everyone is aware of, that everyone's been given notice about, and all of a sudden to be to have the ability of someone to just bring in something that's new that staff don't know about, haven't had an opportunity to comment on, the other staff, the other members of the committee or council don't know about. I just think it's not a good idea.
Kelly and Neil, the questions or comments?
Yeah, for the same reasons, the above one. Again, this happened at a county committee meeting just this past week, and it's not fair to anybody. When somebody brings something up that staff aren't prepared for, it's not fair to staff. It's not fair to councillors. Even if it's brought up and the councillor thinks it's information only, there's usually some sort of ask, or usually some sort of direction required, or usually some sort of agreement asked for tacitly. There's usually something in it, and it's not just for information purposes, even if that's the excuse given to provide it. Well, I just wanted to let you know that. It's typically because you think that the government should go in a certain direction, and you're furthering the business of government without proper notice and without anybody being prepared for it. So, you know, in the situation I'm talking about, it could have been something that really went off the rails. It didn't, but it sure could have, and none of us would have been prepared for it. It's not fair to anybody. So I don't think this is in keeping with the principle of open and transparent government either. And yeah, I think this should be excluded from any kind of procedural bylaw for sure.
Neil.
This is the council equivalent to an open mic, and it'll just derail things. It's my opinion, if a councillor has an issue he wants to raise and she wants to raise and it's not on the agenda, that councillor should work through the mayor and the CAO and find an avenue to get it on the agenda. And if they can't get it on the agenda, then they should institute the notice of motion and put it on the floor that way. But then everybody knows it's coming. We have ample time to research and understand what's going on. And I think that's a far better avenue than new business where you can just get out there and start spewing.
Okay. I know I have comments written in my notes here on this topic from reading through everything, but I can't find them now. Going through different sequence of events than the way I was organized is makes it difficult to find all my notes. So, but I don't disagree that having new business coming up from counselors, I don't think it's a great idea either. So I don't object to that being left off the procedure bylaw. So I think we move on to the next one. Review of appointment of deputy mayor, rotating chair, alternative deputy mayor, emergency. Debbie and John, your comments, please.
Through the chair, this is totally going to be your decision of how you want it done. I have seen it done a variety of ways. I've seen it done, where the deputy mayor is rotating. I've seen it where they've done rotating chairs for the committees, and it solely is a preference of how that council likes to operate. So, I've seen it go either way, and it's worked well in a variety of ways that I've seen it. For where they do deputy mayor rotating on a yearly basis, or rotating chairs for committees. So again, you can put the practices in place to make whatever process you want work. So this is one that you're going to have to make a decision as a council how you want it done. Mm-hmm.
John, comments?
I can't improve upon what Debbie said any better. It's the policy decision of the council to make, and I have the same experience. Sometimes it's one person for half a term or 1 year. Sometimes it's on a rotating basis over the year, and it really depends on whether it works well or not on the personalities in the particular councils that's doing it. So it's your decision.
Thank you. I agree with both of you. I brought this up during the public meeting a week ago because I think it should not be defined in the procedure bylaw how an individual council decides to approach the deputy mayor position. I think it is up to the individual, the mayor of each council to decide how they want to do it, and putting it into the procedure bylaw, other than saying, choosing a method during the inaugural meeting is one thing, but assigning a deputy, putting it in as assigning the deputy mayor, I think is putting a process in place for the next council that should not be done. So that's my take on it. I think each mayor gets to choose how they wish to do it. Kelly and Neil, do you have comments?
Yeah, I'll go first. I agree with you, Kirk. I think it's up to the mayor. I don't think it belongs in a procedural bylaw. I think each mayor should have the choice to pick his or her deputy mayors based on the direction that they've been given from the public. They ran on a platform. They should be able to choose their deputy mayor, and that's the way I've seen it. And I think, being in this pandemic and this emergency situation, I think we outlined how important it is to have the mayor and the deputy mayor on the same page.
Kelly.
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I was leaning towards it would take a lot of onus off the head of council to have to go through the process if you just said it was a vote of council in the first meeting to choose your deputy mayor. But then you think depending on the council, we might not even know each other at that first meeting. So then there'd have to be a lag there. So, I mean, I'm okay with the way it is. I for the reasons that both of you described, and what Councillor Dunsmore said is pretty important. And COVID has demonstrated that. So I think that is there's something to the mayor having putting something, at least recommending, like it's, I recommend to council and council approves. So if council really doesn't like the recommendation, then it doesn't go forward, and then council can make another recommendation, right? So, you know, I put a recommendation forward, it still has to be approved by council. So I think that's a good check and balance there.
Andy,
Thank you, through the chair. My only comment on this would be the fact that just with the emergency management requirements and training, that whoever the mayor does choose as the deputy mayor, it is a annual commitment that deputy mayor has to make in training and meetings. Those requirements are becoming more and more stringent. So that used to be you had to take one course of this or one of that. Now the amount of courses that the mayor and deputy mayor is acting during an emergency are becoming very burdenless. So a rotating position in that would be very difficult, or even a position that would be doing it 1 year and then somebody coming into the emergency deputy mayor situation for the mayor, for staff and the county training would be very challenging.
did you want to add something, Kelly? No, you're just putting on your earphones. Okay. Mike, is there a rule that says the deputy mayor must be also the emergency backup? The backup the mayor for emergencies? Or is that just what we have chosen to do?
I'd have to go back and see how our policy is written, but historically it has been the deputy mayor.
Okay. I would like to recommend, or as our action item, to change 3.04A in the draft to say that at the first meeting, we'll be deciding on the method to appoint a deputy mayor for the council's term, not dictating that there is a deputy, or not appointing a deputy mayor. So that's my take on it. Kelly and Neil, do you agree with that?
I think I need clarification. John,
Yeah,
can you
I do
comment
too.
on that before I?
Yes, I was just going to say, if you do that, you may be without a deputy mayor, without a substitute, because the person who was the deputy mayor before, who was appointed, may not have been reelected, and so is not there. And so if you're delaying it, you may be delaying it for some time before you make a determination. So you're left without the office there, and I think that's not a good situation.
If we might, we've done that for the last 4 terms at least, where the mayor during the inauguration meeting decides on how they are going to approach the deputy mayor. And in some cases, we've not had a deputy mayor. We've just had members of council acting, and we've had rotating deputy mayors, and now we have a full-time deputy mayor. But it was decided at the beginning of the term of council which way we were going to go, and I'd like to have that possibility going forward, because otherwise we're dictating what the next mayor is going to do.
Sorry, can we just get clarification on that, Chair? Because that's not what happened in our situation. I think, if I remember correctly, I recommended to council the deputy mayor position at the same time as I recommended councillors for the different committees, and that didn't happen the first meeting. That happened when we went through that process. So we tied those processes together, and that's the only process I've known since 2010 that we did it that way. I know that in 2010 we had a councillor who went through the process, and he was the deputy mayor for the first 2 years, and then we just didn't bother going and replacing that deputy mayor in the second year. So de facto, I guess that councillor stayed the deputy mayor. I tried to change things and do a rotating one last term. That had mixed reviews. So I did it a little bit differently this year, but it was always at the same time as we did the committee appointments. I think I'm remembering that correctly.
And you very well could be right, Kelly. I just know that it happened at the beginning of each term of council. And I just assumed, based upon the fact that it's written in to the draft bylaw, as the first, what is it? The earliest opportunity following the municipal elections, what it says now. It doesn't say necessarily the inaugural meeting. So that was my mistake. So anyhow, I don't think that we should be determining today how the next mayor is going to choose the deputy mayor. Carrie.
Yes, I just wanted to say, the reason these provisions in the procedure bylaw are in there, that we put them in, is because we've been criticized over the past several years for not having this stuff in writing. So we took this opportunity, staff, and putting some of this stuff in writing and putting it in the procedure bylaw, in order to avert some of that criticism. So we do not have any issues with taking this stuff out, but it was, it's been pointed out by several members of council that this stuff is unwritten and we just go with whatever happens, but there's nothing in writing. So I just wanted to clarify for those that these provisions are in here because we have been criticized for not having these exercises in writing, but we do not have any care that whether these things are in there or not. And that's all this committee needs to do is indicate whether they want them in or they want them out. And we will go status quo from there with the processes that we currently have in place.
Any other comments? So if Carrie, to meet what you want to do and what I would like to see happen, can we change the wording to say, instead of appoint a member as deputy mayor, to decide on the method to appoint a deputy mayor for the council's term? Just change that one clause in there.
I think if this doesn't belong in the procedural bylaw, it doesn't belong in the procedural bylaw.
Okay.
If that's been the advice you've been given, is that there's no need for it to be here, then I think that changing it to that, there's no need for that.
Kelly and Neil, what do you think? Thoughts on that?
Well, it's if we say, like, if we picture how this will go, your first in your first few meetings of council, you're asking council to decide on a method. So you're throwing it to it's no longer giving the mayor the ability to do it, like we talked about. It's putting it in the hands of council how to go about that process. So some of the reasons why I was okay with allowing whoever the mayor was to make that decision was for the reasons that Neil was talking about, so that you had you kind of were operating on the same page, and the mayor and the deputy mayor could kind of work together on things. If we gave council the opportunity, that kind of negates one of the reasons why I was okay with leaving it, because that's what it would be if council determined that it wanted to do a vote, or if they wanted to do it by lot, which has been suggested. It leaves all the options open, and we're not really providing any kind of direction. So I might not like that process as much.
Okay. Sorry, Neil, go ahead.
I'm just trying to figure out what it is that we're trying to ascertain today. Is this supposed to be in the procedure bylaw, yes or no? And if it is, we can give direction to Carrie. This is in there, and it's at the mayor's discretion as to who or she chooses to be their deputy mayor. Or if it doesn't, we can put it somewhere else.
And that's basically, I'm agreeing with you, except I'm just saying, instead of choosing a deputy mayor, you're choosing, you don't have to choose a deputy mayor. A full, for the full term, you can choose a rotating way of having your deputy mayor, or you can, I'm just trying to open it up for the mayor to have that choice, like the mayor has had in the past. And as Kelly has taken advantage of now 3 times, he's changed how he's doing it. So it just taking away the restriction is all I'm suggesting. Yes, Carrie.
I think a simple thing to do is add an S behind the word members. Council shall appoint a member, or in brackets, members as deputy mayor. That way you're given council's given the option of a rotating chair bylaw, or a simply appointing one individual. And staff would have that discussion with the mayor. One of the first things staff would have, if you put an S at the end of members, then that gives us the option of appointing many deputy mayors or one.
That's a step in the right direction. Sure. It leaves the options open. That's all I'm suggesting. Neil and Kelly, are you in agreement with that?
I'm fine with that. Let's deal with that. As long as John and Debbie don't see anything that's really, that we're stepping on a landmine here. If that's fine, then let's do it and move on.
Well, I want to make sure that you're setting up a council for success, right? And I understand that you're trying to build the flexibility to allow the mayor to choose an option that the mayor wants to choose. I guess I'm okay with it. I'm just trying to see how it will work at the end of the day. Like if you're getting around choosing the options that you use, we're not providing any direction, right? And it's the council's decision, it's not the mayor's decision. So I don't know. I'd like to make sure that it's slick, it's clean, and that we understand what the expectations of the head of council are and the expectations of council. And this is still a little gray in my mind.
Debbie, you had something you wanted to add?
Through the chair, I would just, if you're going to keep it in your procedure bylaw, I agree with Carrie and also with the mayor, keep it very tight. I wouldn't do methods within a procedure bylaw, because you should be very clear, black and white. This is the method that you're going to use. One of the municipalities that I just reviewed their procedure bylaw, they've put it as their counselor, certain counselors are going to be a certain specific term. And they put that within the procedure bylaw, but it's very concise. So I agree with the mayor. If you're going to have it in the procedure bylaw, make it very clear and simple. And I can certainly work with Carrie on getting wording that is appropriate based on what you're looking for.
Okay, that sounds like a plan going forward. Thank you. Include the role of council and other references from the Municipal Act, and the advice is not necessary or appropriate. And I'm trying to think of specifically where those comments came from, Carrie, and I can't right off the top. So do you have anything you want to add there?
No, I think there was several members or several people had issued that comment, and I think we actually discussed it at the May 10th meeting as well. Do you remember we were going to do appendices with links and all kinds of stuff? And I think John's advice or Debbie's advice was that's just, this is not an educational tool. This is not a place to regurgitate the Municipal Act. This document should be kind of lean and mean and not regurgitate legislation that could potentially change, and then we'd have to update the bylaw.
Okay. John, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Mr. Chair, no, I think Carrie covered it really well there. I spoke, I think, pretty forcefully against replicating and duplicating provisions for the reason that they might get amended and then they're not picked up, and there's just no reason to put them in there. It's legislated in the Municipal Act, with one exception, and I think that's the one that Debbie brought up last time, and that's for the closed meeting provisions, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but you always have to be careful that you make sure that you use the exact same language that's in the Municipal Act. Apart from that, I would say there's no reason to put in the role of the council, the role of the mayor, the mayor as CEO. I don't think you need any of those things in your procedural bylaw.
I do recall the one comment on including the role of council was just in the introduction to the procedure bylaw, just to refresh everyone's mind of the reason that we're putting the procedure bylaw together to begin with, and is that, I mean, could that not be something that would be considered a positive addition to the bylaw?
Mr. Chair, I just don't see it. You can have a recital, I suppose, in there, but the recital really should just reference the constating authority, which in this case would be subsection 238.2 and 2.1, I think. I don't really see that you need to put that in. It's for what benefit? The reason you put recitals in is to help someone to perhaps understand it a little bit more. But you've already got all those clauses and other provisions, and where do you stop? Someone could say, well, hold on, you put council's role. Why didn't you put the mayor's role? Why didn't you just cite the whole authority for the procedure bylaw? And I think where do you stop? I'm with Carrie, and I think I'm certainly with Debbie to try to have a more streamlined, simplified document that people can understand and use, as opposed to something that's encyclopedic that has cross references and things that I just think are extraneous.
Okay, Debbie, do you have anything you wanted to add there on this topic?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Neil or Kelly?
Not needed, get it out. That's my opinion.
Yeah, same for me.
Okay. And the last on here is the content of staff reports, the right to information. And once again, Carrie, could you just kind of review what that comment means?
Yeah, I think that was mentioned a couple times, in that they people wanted to dictate what needed to be included in a staff report, the lack of information provided by staff. This provision in a bylaw would outline what information needed to be dictated and included in a staff report. I think we did talk about this too, I think at the May 10th meeting, that this was an administrative matter and not a matter for the procedure bylaw to outline. I think that was raised at the May 10th meeting.
Okay, and should the procedure bylaw, I tend to agree, is not where you need it, but it just an outline of the format of staff reports. Is that written somewhere? Andy?
Through Mr. Chair, we do not have a policy, as most municipalities do not have a policy with regards to the information. When we did revise not the style, but the content within the policy, within the staff reports, we reviewed a number of other municipalities, and the items that we have is titled components to our reports are very consistent with many other municipalities. A recommendation, summary, background, financial engagement, consistency with the strategic plan, who was consulted, and the recommendation. And then the addendums are the attachments of financials or things of that nature, which are consistent, which is very consistent with you'll see in many other larger municipalities and smaller. I actually have seen other municipalities where the content of a staff report is quite substantially less than what our staff are providing. Personally, I will say this at this committee, that I find it a little condescending that there's a feeling that staff are not providing all the information. I believe this is a bit of a comment that some members of council do not trust staff, that we're sharing all the information that is required. It is our role and professional act to provide the information and be able to allow council to make the best decision they can. And we do believe that we provide as much information as we possibly can. We do not go through and provide every different scenario that we've reviewed for coming up to the recommendation. That is our professional role, to review and analyze those, but we do give council a very overarching background of what we've done, the situation, and based on our expertise and our professional training, what the recommendation is. And it is council's decision at the end of the day to accept that, alter it, or ask staff to come back with something else.
Thank you. Okay, we can, the advice is not to, it doesn't belong under procedure by law. I don't disagree. I just was wondering exactly if there was some place you could reference it, and you've answered that question. So I know John and Debbie have a hard stop 5 minutes ago, and so we better call it motion to adjourn, I think, until next, or till the 26th. Do we have any suggestions on how to go forward on the 26th? Will we start at the beginning of the draft and kind of go through on a point-by-point basis, and now that we have got rid of some themes? Does that make sense to start the next one? Debbie, you're the expert here in this area. What are your thoughts?
Through the chair, yes, that's the normal process now, as we'll, based on the feedback we've got, we can tweak some of the motions that you're looking for in the procedure bylaw, but then it's best to go through as a team, and we provide your comments. And also, I've already edited where I think we need just some little tweaking. And I think that's the best approach for next, is just to get right into the procedure bylaw.
Perfect. That's what I'm looking forward to. So thank you everyone for coming out. A motion to adjourn. Neil, seconded by Kelly. And we'll see you on the 26th, I believe.
Thanks, Kurt.
Have a good weekend, a good week and a week.